The sun hadn't fully risen, yet only a faint ribbon of orange stretched across the horizon, casting a cold glow on the quiet fields of Cedar Ridge Ranch. Snow lay heavy on every surface, muffling sound and swallowing color until the world felt frozen in time. Inside the big, lonely ranch house, Reed Walker stood at the counter, pouring coffee into a chipped old mug he had owned since his 20s. The mug was stained, worn, and the handle had a tiny crack running down the side. But he kept it because it reminded him of a life that once felt warm, before the ranch grew too big, before the world grew too quiet, before Christmas mornings became nothing but hollow routines. He took a long sip and let the steam fog the edge of his glasses. The radio was off. The lights were dim. He didn't bother decorating anymore. Not since the year he'd packed the boxes away and never brought them out again. Holidays were a reminder of who wasn't here, of the family he never built, of the fiancée he had once promised the world to. 10 years of silence had settled into him like dust in an undisturbed attic. After finishing his coffee, Reed pulled on his coat, grabbed his gloves, and stepped outside to check the barns. The cold hit his face instantly, sharp enough to burn. He breathed out, watching the steam curl upward. The familiar crunch of snow under his boots was the only sound he heard until he noticed something strange. There were footprints in the untouched snow. His brow furrowed. They were small prints, too small to belong to any ranch hand or neighbor. 2 sets, 2 trails that wove through the fresh snow straight toward his porch. He followed them slowly, confusion growing with every step. He rounded the corner of the house just as a soft tapping reached his ears. It wasn't a knock, not even close. It was light, nervous, almost apologetic. When he stepped into view of the front porch, he nearly stopped breathing. Standing there, bundled in oversized coats and scarves nearly swallowing their faces, were 2 little girls, twins, no older than 7. Snowflakes clung to their blonde braids, and their cheeks were flushed a bright apple red from the cold. One of them had a small gap between her front teeth, giving her a lopsided but undeniably sweet smile. The other clutched her backpack straps like she was bracing for something big. The girl with the chipped tooth spotted him first and nudged her sister. They stood straighter, arranging themselves like they'd practiced something in their heads before coming. Reed blinked, trying to piece together what he was seeing. Children didn't wander up here. The ranch sat miles outside town, with long roads winding around frozen creeks and snow-heavy pines. People didn't just show up, especially not 2 small girls with backpacks. Hi, the girl with the chipped tooth said, lifting something in her mittened hands. Her voice wavered slightly but carried a surprising amount of courage. Kids had a way of being braver than they realized. Reed rubbed a gloved hand over his jaw. Where are your parents? The twins looked at each other in that mysterious way siblings often did, communicating entire conversations with a single glance. After a moment, the other girl stepped forward, her voice quiet but determined. We were looking for you. Me? Reed asked, more startled than he intended to sound. Yes, both girls said at the same time. The second twin nodded with solemn certainty. You're Mr. Walker, everyone. Says you live alone up here and you have the fastest horses. Reed let out a short breath. People say too much. The chipped-toothed twin lifted the item in her hands, a folded, crinkled piece of notebook paper. We need your help. His confusion only deepened. Help with what? With this, they said together. It's a letter, the girl said. For Santa, the other finished. Reed looked at the letter but didn't take it yet. Children on his porch on Christmas morning, asking him of all people for help. His heart felt like it was thawing and cracking at the same time. Where do you live? He asked carefully. That question made the girls shift uncomfortably. Their eyes dropped to the snow-covered porch. When they finally spoke, it was barely more than a whisper. We're at the temporary place right now, one said. The shelter, the other admitted. Reed exhaled, realizing instantly why they looked cold. Tired and far too wise for their age. The backpacks weren't school bags, they were everything they owned. Something twisted in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time, a protective instinct, a quiet ache. He crouched down so he was level with them. Why did you come all the way out here? Why me? The chipped-tooth girl swallowed, her mitten sliding nervously against the paper she held. Because you're the only grown-up who can still find things. Reed frowned softly. Find things? She nodded vigorously. People say you find lost cows and horses. And even that boy who wandered off last summer. And we thought, the other added cautiously, maybe you could find Christmas too. That hit him like a hammer. He didn't move for a long moment. Slowly, gently, he reached out his calloused hand. Let me see your letter. The twins' faces lit up with a hope so bright it warmed the icy air between them. They almost jumped forward as they handed the note over. Reed opened it carefully, unfolding the worn paper with a reverence he didn't expect to feel. The handwriting inside was large and uneven, switching between two distinct styles. Dear Santa, we don't need toys this year. We need a home and someone who won't leave. Love, Emma and Lily. Reed stared at the words until they blurred. He wasn't sure if it was the cold or something else that made his eyes sting. He swallowed hard, closing the letter slowly as if it were fragile. When he looked up, both girls were watching him closely. Hopeful, scared, desperate. Can you send it? Emma whispered. Reed folded the letter with steady, gentle hands. Yes, he said. His voice came out low and firm. I can. Lily's face lit up, her breath catching in excitement. Really? Reed nodded. But first, the two of you are coming inside. You're freezing. The girls hesitated only long enough to glance at each other, one small moment of silent permission, before they rushed past him into the warm house, snow falling from their boots in tiny puddles across his entryway. Reed remained on the porch, staring at the letter in his hand as the cold wind brushed against him. For the first time in years, something inside him felt alive. Two little girls had come to him on Christmas morning, and somehow they'd brought Christmas with them. The girls rushed into the house with a burst of cold air and the faint scent of peppermint, their boots tapping against the hardwood floor as they looked around with wide eyes. Reed followed them in, closing the door behind him and trapping a cocoon of warmth inside. The twins stood in the entryway like they had stepped into a forbidden castle, awed, cautious, unsure if they were allowed to breathe too loudly. They held their backpacks in front of them like shields. Set those down by the bench, Reed said gently, pointing toward a small wooden seat near the wall. And come warm up. Emma and Lily exchanged another silent glance, then slowly lowered their backpacks to the floor. Steam rose from their damp boots. Reed walked past them to the fireplace and crouched down to stoke the embers until flames rose brighter, crackling and popping like they were greeting the girls. Sit, he said softly. The twins crept to the rug near the fire and lowered themselves onto it. Their small hands stretched toward the heat, fingers trembling slightly as the cold left their bodies. They didn't talk at first, just breathed in the comfort like it was something rare and breakable. Reed left them there for a moment and headed to the kitchen. He wasn't used to company, especially not children, but instinct pushed him to do something, anything. He warmed milk on the stove and found a tin of cocoa powder he hadn't opened in years. When he came back with 2 mugs crowned with little marshmallows he'd found in the pantry, the girls' faces lit with something he didn't know he missed seeing. Pure, uncomplicated joy. For us? Lily asked, barely daring to lift the mug. For you, Reed said. They wrapped their hands around the warm cups, drinking slowly, savoring every moment. Their cheeks regained color, their shoulders loosened, and for the first time since they'd arrived, they looked like kids. Reed sat down across from them on the edge of the hearth. Now, he said gently, tell me more about this letter. The girls lowered their drinks slightly. Emma, the one with the chipped tooth, looked up first. We wrote it last night, after the lights went out. In the shelter? Reed asked. They nodded. Lily fidgeted with her scarf.
Sometimes they have too many people.
And it's loud. And we couldn't sleep. Emma added, and Santa can't come to the shelter. Not every Christmas. At least that's what the other kids said. Reed's jaw tightened. Kids shouldn't have to worry about things like that. They shouldn't have to believe magic had boundaries. So, Lily continued, we thought maybe Santa needed help. Someone to deliver it, Emma said. Then she lowered her voice. Someone who knows how to find things. Reed felt that twist in his chest again, a feeling like an old wound waking up. What exactly are you hoping Santa will bring you? The twins hesitated. They looked at each other, then at the fire, then back at Reed. Their voices came out soft, almost embarrassed. A home, Emma whispered. And someone who stays, Lily added. Reed swallowed hard. Do you have anyone family? The girls shook their heads. Emma tugged at a loose thread on her mitten. Our mom, she got sick. A long time ago. And they said we had to stay somewhere safe, Lily said, blinking fast. Reed felt the air thicken. He wasn't good at talking about pain. Not his own, much less theirs, but he didn't need to say anything. Silence sometimes spoke better. After a long moment, Lily reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. We brought something else, she said. Just in case. Reed raised an eyebrow. In case of what? In case you said no, Emma replied. Lily unwrapped the object carefully. Inside was a tiny wooden carving, rough around the edges, clearly handmade. It was a horse no bigger than Reed's thumb, with uneven legs and a crooked tail carved with a child's patience and a child's imperfection. Reed blinked. Did you make that? Together, they said proudly. We made it because, Emma started. Because you like horses, Lily finished. And because grown-ups help each other if they get presents, Emma added. Sometimes. Lily nodded seriously. It's what we saw at the shelter. Reed held out his hand and Lily placed the carving in his palm. It was warm from being in her pocket. He stared at it for a long time, feeling something in him loosen, something he'd buried years ago under work. Loss and silence. Girls, he said quietly, I didn't need a gift. But I'm honored you made this. Emma smiled shyly. We wanted you to know we're worth helping. Those words struck him harder than he expected. He closed his fist gently around the carving. You are, he said.
More than you know.
The twins leaned closer to the fire, comforted by his tone. Outside, the wind howled gently, pushing snow against the windows, but inside, the ranch felt warmer than it had in years. Reed stood and walked to the kitchen. He opened the drawer where he kept his old stationery, unused for a decade. When he returned with a proper envelope, a pen and a small brass sealing stamp, the girl's eyes widened. What are you doing? Lily asked. Sending your letter, Reed replied. Emma tilted her head. But Santa doesn't get mail from here. Reed knelt beside them. Santa gets mail from people who believe in making wishes come true. And I think he'll want to read yours. The twins exchanged hopeful glances. Reed folded their letter into the new envelope, sealed it, and pressed the brass stamp into the warm wax. The twins watched like he was performing some ancient magic. Then Reed stood and walked to the big picture window overlooking the snowy ranch. Come here, he said. The twins ran to his side. Reed pointed toward the old barn at the edge of the property. See that light? The barn lantern flickered in the wind. That's where the mail for special wishes goes, he said, softly. We'll take it there together. Emma gasped. Lily grabbed her sister's hand. Santa is going to get our letter, Lily whispered. Reed nodded slowly. Yes, he will. He didn't know what the future held, not for them, not for him. But in that moment, with two hopeful girls standing beside him, and a letter sealed with more courage than most adults could muster, he felt something bloom inside his chest, something warm, something alive, something like Christmas. And for the first time in 10 long empty years, Reed Walker didn't feel alone.